Hello, and welcome to today's discussion about how social media can be used in research. As a college student, you're going to be called upon to write essays from your very first year until your very last year. And while depending on whatever major you're in, the nature of that final paper that you write, your thesis, is going to vary. It could require research, and certainly in the years leading up to then, you are going to have to write papers that require research. In doing so, there is a pretty big misconception that social media posts aren't credible sources when conducting research. A lot of students think that the best research to use is just specifically academic research. That is, any article that's posted by a scholar, an academic scholar, typically someone with a PhD or who is pursuing a PhD, that they have written and had vetted and peer reviewed to be included in a scholarly journal. And while those are always great sources to use because you know automatically that they come from credible sources, that doesn't mean that you can't use sources from other places. And one of those places just might be social media. The misconception is that those sources aren't credible and that they're not useful in terms of including information that we glean from them in a research paper. A majority of the people who use social media and who post to it are laymen. A lot of people who are the most popular on social media aren't people who went to school and got degrees in a certain topic, but they might be social media influencers or experts by some other metric on that topic. However, if the sources that you're considering using from social media align with the objective of your research, then there's plenty of situations where it could prove useful. This first example isn't one of them because this is a clear example of the speaker having ethos, but we can consider this for just a moment and then we'll dive into a few things that might be a little bit more iffy. So, despite being known as a cesspool of some of the worst commentary on the internet, Twitter is also home to many public figures. Donald Trump is one, and he's well known as being a prolific tweeter. This normally wouldn't mean anything. There's lots of people who tweet all the time, but Donald Trump, as we all know, served as president of the United States from 2017 until 2021. If we take that information and consider that we were going to write a research paper that was exploring that contemporaneous change in the political climate that emerged during the Trump presidency and maybe a little bit before, we would have a very good argument for wanting to explore his social media profiles and see what he has to say. Typically, if you were going to write a paper on this topic, you might feel constrained to looking at official press releases or any formal addresses that former President Trump made to the press, but Twitter does exist. And its existence gave President Trump a mouthpiece with which to share his personal thoughts throughout the course of most days. And given that that information that he shares on social media comes directly from him on a personal account, it would be advantageous to use those statements in support of the paper, if there are indeed statements that he makes that would help benefit it. Another example might be a research paper on the negative impacts of social media on body image, mental health, or other similar topics. It would absolutely be prudent to cite examples from somewhere like Instagram to demonstrate this either through user testimony, analysis of images that use filters or Photoshop, or even just comments on relevant posts. The research here is about the impact of social media. It almost seems negligent not to leverage social media and use examples directly from platforms that you believe in this research paper contribute most to this in order to make that point. Because certainly there's plenty of examples that are still up and available and accessible to the public that could be used to that end. And one last example might be researching the impacts of mass shootings on survivors. In some of those cases, people involved with those situations do end up posting about it on social media, whether to bring awareness or clear any misinformation up, or for whatever cathartic purpose, any purpose that they might have to post it, they might post that. And so leveraging Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter posts from those involved could help you to get a more intimate understanding of how those individuals feel or felt about the situation. This doesn't mean, though, that all of your future papers should become completely inundated with social media posts as sources. It is always beneficial and preferable, actually, to strike a balance between various sources in order to create the strongest effect in your research. In the third example with mass shootings, those social media testimonies would still need to have a purpose within the wider scope of the research. For instance, the testimonies might be used to validate claims made by a scholarly article. It might be an article that is discussing the effects that trauma has on people, and you could use those testimonies on social media to corroborate that. And maybe to ensure that the individuals that were speaking on the matter were truly victims of the event, you could look for news articles that covered that event and see if that could help to verify some of the information about who could or could not have actually been there at the time. Research writing isn't about sounding academic. It's not about using the most esteemed sources. And by that I mean the sources with the highest level of credibility. That would go to your academic journals. What you want to do is you want to also think about using the most effective sources. And sometimes using a whole litany of peer-reviewed articles is not going to be nearly as effective as branching out and trying to find information from different places. Social media happens to be one of those places. There is good information that can be found from it. And more to that point, the value of any source exists in the information that it provides you. At the end of the day, the information you're able to collect will be the focal point of your research paper. Sometimes the location of that particular information is much less important than the fact that the information exists at all. And some information, unfortunately, does only exist on social media. In fact, style guides like MLA and APA have all adapted to create conventions for how you cite these social media sources. And they've created conventions for how you cite information from video hosting sites. If those official associations see enough validity in digital content to take that step, you as a student should feel a lot safer using them as resources when they're appropriate. Hopefully this helps you understand a little better how social media can be leveraged in writing, even at the college level. So until next time, drink water, stay healthy, call your parents when you think of them, and tell your friends that you love them. I'll see you next time.